I got the termination email at 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Subject line, immediate separation, final. No meeting. No explanation. Just a PDF attachment with my severance package and instructions to return my laptop by end of business day. My name is Nathan Cross. I'm 34 years old, and until that moment, I thought loyalty and results actually mattered in corporate America. I was wrong. I had spent the last 6 years building the data analytics division at Horizon Tech Solutions in Austin, Texas. When I started in 2018, the company was hemorrhaging money in their software consulting business. Their biggest client had just left, and the CEO, Preston Whitmore, was scrambling to find the next revenue stream before investors pulled out. That's where I came in. Fresh from getting my MBA from University of Texas, with a background in both software engineering and statistical analysis. Preston hired me as a senior analyst at $89,000 a year to figure out what the company should do next. I didn't just figure it out. I built it from scratch. Within 8 months, I had created a predictive analytics service that helped mid-size companies forecast their sales patterns with 94% accuracy. Our first client was a manufacturing company in Houston that paid us $127,000 for a 6-month contract. By the end of year 1, we had 8 clients and had generated $1.2 million in revenue. Preston was thrilled. He promoted me to Director of Analytics and gave me a team of 3 people. My salary jumped to $118,000. He'd walk past my desk every morning and say, "Nathan, you're the future of this company." By year 3, my division had 23 employees and had brought in $8.7 million. We were 60% of Horizon's total revenue. The original consulting business was basically dead, surviving on a handful of legacy contracts. Preston promoted me again in 2021. Vice President of Data Analytics. Salary, $156,000 plus bonuses tied to division performance. I hit every target. My team was happy. Clients loved us. I was working 70-hour weeks, but I didn't mind. I believed I was building something that mattered. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. Then Preston hired Vanessa Sterling in January 2024. She was 29, Stanford MBA, came from a big consulting firm in San Francisco. Her resume was impressive, but something about her felt off from day one. She smiled too much, asked too many questions about things that didn't concern her role. Preston introduced her as the new Chief Strategy Officer. Her salary, I later discovered, was $210,000. More than mine, even though she had zero experience in our industry. Vanessa is going to help us scale to the next level, Preston announced at the company all-hands meeting in February. She brings fresh perspective and connections we need for our Series B funding round. I shook her hand and welcomed her to the team. That was my first mistake. Within 2 weeks, Vanessa was in meetings with my clients. She'd show up unannounced, sit in on project reviews, and ask questions that undermined my team's work. "Are we sure this model is the most efficient approach?" she'd say, flipping through our presentation materials. "I've seen other firms use different methods." My clients started getting confused. They'd email me after meetings asking if there were problems with our work. I'd have to spend hours reassuring them that everything was fine, that Vanessa was just learning the business. In March, Preston called me into his office. "Nathan, Vanessa has some concerns about the division's long-term strategy," he said, not making eye contact. "She thinks we're too focused on mid-market clients. Wants us to pivot toward enterprise." I leaned forward. "Preston, we've talked about this. Enterprise clients require different infrastructure, different sales cycles. We'd need to hire 15 more people and wouldn't see revenue for 18 months. Our current model is printing money." "I hear you," Preston said, "but Vanessa has experience with enterprise scaling. Maybe we should listen." That's when I should have seen it coming. But I was too focused on my work, too confident that results would speak for themselves. In April, Vanessa started scheduling strategy sessions with my team members. One-on-one meetings where she'd ask about our processes, our client relationships, our revenue forecasts. She'd take detailed notes on her laptop, nodding and smiling. My senior analyst, Omar Walsh, came to me after his third meeting with her. "Something's weird, Nathan," he said, closing my office door. "She's asking me to forward her all our client contracts and our forecasting algorithms. Says it's for a board presentation." "Did Preston approve this?" I asked. "She says yes, but I wanted to check with you first." I called Preston. He seemed annoyed that I was questioning Vanessa's requests. "She's C-suite now, Nathan. She has access to whatever she needs. Just cooperate." I told Omar to send her the information. That was my second mistake. In May, Preston announced that Horizon had secured Series B funding, $15 million from a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. The company valuation had jumped to $67 million, almost entirely because of my division's revenue and growth trajectory. At the celebration party, Preston gave a speech thanking the team. He mentioned my division exactly once, in passing. He mentioned Vanessa 7 times, crediting her strategic vision and transformational leadership. I stood in the back of the room, drinking my beer, watching Vanessa smile and shake hands with investors. Something cold settled in my stomach. 2 weeks later, Preston called me into the conference room. Vanessa was already sitting there, her laptop open, that same smile on her face. "Nathan, we need to discuss some performance concerns," Preston began. Performance concerns. My division had just closed Q1 with $2.8 million in revenue, 15% above target. "What concerns?" I asked. Vanessa turned her laptop around. It showed a PowerPoint presentation titled Analytics Division, Critical Issues and Recommended Restructuring. She clicked to the first slide. "We've identified several areas where the division is underperforming against industry benchmarks." For the next 30 minutes, she walked through a presentation that systematically tore apart everything I'd built. She claimed our profit margins were too low, our client retention strategy was outdated, our technology stack was inefficient, and our team structure was bloated. Every criticism was technically true if you squinted and compared us to companies with 10 times our resources. But it ignored the fact that we were profitable, growing, and had 97% client retention. "What's the recommendation?" I asked, even though I already knew. Preston cleared his throat. "We're restructuring the division. Vanessa is going to take over as President of Analytics. You'll report to her as Senior Director of Operations. A demotion, a $38,000 pay cut, and my division handed to someone who'd been at the company for 5 months. This is based on 5 months of observation," I said, keeping my voice level. "I built this division from zero. It's 60% of company revenue." "And we appreciate that," Preston said. "But we need experienced leadership to scale to $50 million. Vanessa has that experience." No, she didn't. She had a fancy MBA and smooth talking skills. But I was being boxed out, and I knew it. I had a choice in that moment. I could fight it, make a scene, and probably get fired anyway. Or I could smile, accept the demotion, and figure out my next move. "I need some time to think about this," I said. "We need an answer by Monday," Vanessa said. Her smile never wavered. That weekend, I didn't think about their offer. Instead, I did something I'd been trained to do my entire career. I analyzed the situation like a data problem. I pulled out every document I had from the past 6 years. Employment contracts, project files, client correspondence, revenue reports. I had kept meticulous records, a habit from my engineering days. Then I found something interesting in my employment contract from 2021, when I'd been promoted to VP. Section 7.3, in the event that the data analytics division is sold, spun off, or transferred to another entity, employee shall receive 4% of the transaction value as a success bonus, calculated on gross sale price prior to debt and liabilities. I read it 3 times. It was Preston's idea, written when he was afraid I might leave for a competitor. A retention clause designed to keep me loyal if the company ever sold the division I'd built. 4% didn't sound like much until you did the math. If the company valuation was $67 million, and my division represented 60% of that value, then the division alone was worth roughly $40 million. 4% of $40 million was $1.6 million. But here's what made my blood run cold. Vanessa wasn't trying to restructure my division. She was trying to position it for sale. I spent Sunday afternoon digging through public records and LinkedIn connections. Turns out Vanessa Sterling had a very specific background. She'd spent 3 years at Stratford Acquisitions, a firm that specialized in buying profitable divisions from struggling tech companies, then flipping them to larger corporations. Her last project at Stratford, she'd helped acquire a data division from a Seattle startup for $8 million, then sold it to Amazon 6 months later for $31 million. She wasn't hired to help Horizon grow. She was hired to package and sell my division. And Preston was in on it. Monday morning, I walked into Preston's office and declined the demotion. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to pass, I said. If you don't value my leadership, I should probably look elsewhere. Preston seemed relieved. I understand, Nathan. We'll work out a separation package. Actually, I said, pulling out my employment contract, I'd like to review section 7.3 before we discuss separation. His face changed, just slightly, a flicker of concern. That clause only applies if we sell the division, he said carefully. Right, I agreed. So we're not planning to sell it? Of course not. Great. Then you won't mind if I take my severance package and we part ways amicably. We shook hands. He looked pleased with himself. That was his mistake. I spent the next 2 weeks acting like a model employee during my transition period. I trained Vanessa's new hire, a kid fresh from college named Tanner who didn't know the difference between regression analysis and a pivot table. I documented all my processes. I smiled in meetings. And quietly, I did 3 other things. First, I contacted Antoine Briggs, an employment attorney who specialized in executive contracts. I paid him $8,000 from my savings to review my situation. This is fascinating, Antoine said during our first meeting at his downtown Austin office. If they sell within 12 months of your termination, and you can prove the sale was planned during your employment, you still have rights to that clause. How do I prove it was planned? I asked. Phone records, emails, meeting calendars, anything showing discussions with potential buyers before your termination date. That's when I remembered something. I still had access to my company email on my phone. IT hadn't shut it down yet, probably an oversight during the rushed termination. I forwarded 3 years of emails to my personal account. Every message mentioning acquisition, sale, exit strategy, or Vanessa Sterling. Then I wiped my company phone and returned it. Second, I reached out to every client I'd worked with personally. Not to badmouth Horizon, just friendly check-ins. Hey, I'm no longer with the company, but wanted to make sure you're taken care of during the transition. 8 of our 12 biggest clients responded with some version of, wait, you're leaving? We only work with Horizon because of you. I saved those messages. Third, I filed a complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission about misclassification of my severance package. This created a paper trail and official documentation of my termination date, June 13th, 2024. Then I waited. 6 weeks later, in late July, I got a LinkedIn message from Omar, my former senior analyst. Nathan, I thought you should know. Vanessa just announced the division is being acquired by TechFlow Systems. They're calling it a merger, but everyone knows it's a sale. Rumor is $38 million. Vanessa is getting a $2 million bonus. Preston is celebrating. None of us are getting anything. I stared at that message for a long time. $38 million. 4% was $1.52 million. I called Antoine immediately. They sold it, I said. 6 weeks after firing me. $38 million to TechFlow Systems. Perfect, Antoine said. That's well within the 12-month window. And the timeline proves this was planned before your termination. We have a case. What's our next move? We send a demand letter. Give them 10 days to pay your contractual bonus plus interest. If they refuse, we file suit. The demand letter went out on August 2nd, 2024. It was polite but crystal clear. Nathan Cross is owed $1,520,000 per Section 7.3 of his employment contract dated March 2021. Payment due within 10 business days. Preston's response came through Horizon's corporate attorney, a guy named Randolph Pierce from a big firm on Congress Avenue. The letter was 5 pages long, but it boiled down to 3 arguments. 1. I was terminated before the sale, so the clause didn't apply. 2. The clause was meant for retention, and since I wasn't retained, it was void. 3. I had voluntarily declined the restructuring offer, which constituted abandonment of my contractual rights. Antoine smiled when he read it. They're grasping. These arguments won't hold up. We filed suit in Travis County District Court on August 19, 2024. Civil case number D1GN 24004729. I was asking for $1.52 million plus legal fees and interest. The case was assigned to Judge Malcolm Rivers, who had a reputation for being no-nonsense about contract law. Here's what Preston and Vanessa didn't know. I had documentation for everything. I had the email chain from April where Vanessa had asked Preston about potential suitors for the analytics arm and Preston had responded, "Let's discuss offline." This could be the exit we've been waiting for. I had calendar invitations showing that Vanessa had met with TechFlow's VP of Corporate Development 4 times between March and May, all while I was still employed. I had the PowerPoint presentation from Preston's laptop, which I'd legitimately accessed during a client meeting, showing a financial model titled Analytics Division Sale Projections 2024. And I had something even better. An internal memo from Vanessa to Preston dated May 30th, 2 weeks before I was fired. It read, "Nathan is a blocker to the sale. TechFlow wants clean leadership transition. Recommend termination before deal announcement to avoid complications with his contract clause." Omar had forwarded it to me months earlier, thinking I'd want to know what was being said about me. He'd found it in a shared folder by accident. That memo was the smoking gun. Discovery phase began in October. Antoine subpoenaed all of Horizon's communications regarding the TechFlow sale. Preston's attorneys fought it hard, claiming attorney-client privilege and proprietary business information. Judge Rivers wasn't having it. This is a contract dispute. If the plaintiff has specific documents showing premeditation of sale during employment, they're discoverable. You have 30 days to comply. The documents arrived in early November. Boxes of printed emails, calendar records, and financial projections. Antoine's paralegal, a sharp woman named Yolanda Cruz, spent 2 weeks combing through everything. She created a timeline that was devastating. January 12, 2024. Vanessa Sterling hired as CSO January 20th, 2024. First email from Preston to Vanessa mentioning exploring strategic alternatives February 8th, 2024. Vanessa meets with Stratford Acquisitions, her former employer, about package opportunities March 15th, 2024. First contact with TechFlow Systems March 22nd, 2024. Internal valuation sets analytics division worth at $35 to $42 million April 7th, 2024. TechFlow expresses interest but wants streamlined leadership structure May 18th, 2024. Preston and Vanessa meet with investment bankers to structure deal May 30th, 2024. Vanessa's memo recommending my termination June 13th, 2024. I'm fired July 29th, 2024. Sale to TechFlow announced at $38 million. The pattern was clear. They'd been planning this sale for 6 months. They'd fired me specifically to avoid paying the contractual bonus. And they'd tried to cover their tracks. Mediation was scheduled for December 10th, 2024. We met in a conference room at the mediator's office in downtown Austin. Preston showed up in his usual expensive suit, looking calm and confident. Vanessa was there too, along with 3 attorneys from their firm. I sat with Antoine. Just the 2 of us. The mediator, a retired judge named Francine Walters, walked through the basics. "We're here to see if we can reach a settlement before trial. Mr. Pierce, would your clients like to make an opening offer?" Randolph Pierce adjusted his glasses. "We're prepared to offer Mr. Cross $150,000 to settle all claims and sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement." I almost laughed. $150,000 was 10% of what they owed me. "That's insulting," Antoine said calmly. "My client is owed $1.52 million per his contract. Your clients engaged in a deliberate scheme to terminate him before the sale specifically to avoid this payment. We have documentation proving it." "Alleged documentation," Pierce said. "Subject to interpretation." Antoine opened his laptop and turned it toward the mediator. "This is an email from Ms. Sterling to Mr. Whitmore, dated May 30th, 2 weeks before Mr. Cross was terminated. Would you like me to read it aloud?" Preston's face went pale. He leaned over to whisper urgently to Pierce. The mediator read the email silently. Her eyebrows went up. "This is quite damaging," she said. "Mr. Pierce, I'd suggest a sidebar with your clients." They caucused for 45 minutes. When they came back, Preston looked like he'd aged 5 years. "We're prepared to offer $800,000, Pierce said. $1.52 million plus $200,000 in legal fees, Antoine countered. "That's what the contract says, and that's what a judge will award." Another caucus. Another 30 minutes. $1 million, final offer. I looked at Antoine. He leaned close and whispered, "We'll win at trial. But trials are expensive and take time. It's your call." I thought about it. $1 million would change my life. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle. "No," I said clearly. "I want the full amount." Preston finally spoke directly to me for the first time that day. "Nathan, be reasonable. $1 million is a fortune." "You know what else is a fortune?" I replied. "The $38 million you got for the division I built. The division you sold 6 weeks after firing me to avoid paying what you owed. You thought I wouldn't fight. You were wrong." We left mediation without a deal. The trial was set for February 2025. But something interesting happened in January. TechFlow Systems announced they were backing out of the acquisition. The press release was vague about reasons, but industry blogs filled in the details. Turns out, 8 of the 12 major clients had refused to renew their contracts after I left. Without those anchor clients, the division was worth maybe $12 million, not $38 million. TechFlow had an escape clause in the purchase agreement. If revenue dropped by more than 30% before the deal closed, they could walk. Revenue had dropped by 47%. The deal collapsed. Preston and Vanessa were left holding a division that was hemorrhaging clients and worth a quarter of what they'd planned. The investors who'd funded Series B were furious. 2 board members resigned. And our lawsuit was still pending. In late January, I got a call from Antoine. They want to settle. They're desperate now. The company is in serious trouble. What's the offer? $1.52 million plus legal fees. Full amount. They want it done quietly. No, I said. I want one more thing. What's that? I want Preston to sign a declaration that he and Vanessa conspired to terminate me to avoid the contractual payment. And I want that declaration to be public record. Antoine was quiet for a moment. That could expose them to shareholder lawsuits. It's a big ask. That's my price. 3 days later, we had a deal. On February 4th, 2025, Horizon Tech Solutions paid me $1,720,000. The full contractual amount plus legal fees and interest. Preston Whitmore signed a declaration admitting that my termination was specifically timed to avoid paying the success bonus, and that the sale had been planned during my employment. That declaration was filed with the court and became public record. Within a week, 2 shareholders filed derivative lawsuits against Preston and Vanessa for breach of fiduciary duty. The board launched an investigation. By March, both of them had been forced to resign. Vanessa Sterling's last LinkedIn update was in April 2025. She'd moved back to San Francisco, working at some small consulting firm. No fancy title. Her reputation in the industry was basically destroyed. Preston Whitmore tried to start a new company. Last I heard, he couldn't get funding. Word travels fast in venture capital circles about founders who screw over the people who make them successful. Horizon Tech Solutions itself was acquired for parts in June 2025. The analytics division was sold off separately for $4.2 million, about 90% less than the original TechFlow offer. The company that had been valued at $67 million disappeared completely. As for me, I used $400,000 of the settlement to start my own analytics consulting firm. I hired Omar and 4 other people from my old team. We landed our first client in March, a logistics company in Denver that paid us $290,000 for a 12-month contract. We're not huge, but we're profitable, we're growing, and most importantly, I own it. Nobody can take it away. Nobody can fire me to avoid paying what I'm owed. Last week, I got a LinkedIn message from a guy I didn't know. He worked at a tech company in Boston and had read about my case in a trade publication. "Your story inspired me to check my own employment contract," he wrote. "Found a clause I didn't remember. My company is planning to sell our division next quarter. Because of you, I know to protect myself. Thank you." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I printed it out and pinned it to my office wall. Some people will always put greed ahead of integrity. They'll smile while planning to betray you. They'll rewrite history to make themselves the hero. But documentation beats deception every single time. Numbers don't lie. Contracts don't forget. And sometimes the person they underestimate is the same person who knows exactly how to build a case that destroys them. Preston thought he was getting rid of a problem employee. What he actually did was create an enemy who had the skills, the evidence, and the patience to take everything from him. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a well-documented paper trail and a contract clause that someone forgot to read carefully. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.